Well, good morning and welcome to the fourth and final day of Dreamforce 2018. And what a better way to start the day than a session on AMPscript. So my name is Elliot Harper, and I've been working with Marketing Cloud for many years now. I'm very active in the user community, and I've also written articles and books on Marketing Cloud, shameless plug time, including my latest book that I co-authored with Adam Spriggs, the legend sitting at the back there. You can pick up a copy of this book from the Dream Store up on the second floor, or head over to AMPscript.guide. So before we begin, unfortunately I'm required to show you this slide and remind you to go and read the small print that by attending this session and Dreamforce that you need to give your firstborn child to Salesforce. No, that's not what it says at all. Just kidding. Reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and as such, you need to base all your purchasing decisions on products and services that already exist, which AMPscript does, so we can move on. So firstly, can I have a show of hands? Who here is a developer? Any developers? One, two, OK. Well, you are in the developer zone, and this is a developer session, which is kind of awkward, but don't worry, stay seated, because thanks to AMPscript, you too can be a developer. After all, as the developers here will tell you, that a developer is just a person who can fix a problem that you don't know you have in a way that you don't understand. And in this session, we'll find out that it's easy to get started as an AMPscript developer, without any prior programming or scripting knowledge, and you can impress your colleagues, your family, and friends at parties with all your newly found AMPscript knowledge. So in this session today, we're going to be looking at the following items. So firstly, I'll talk a bit about what AMPscript is. We'll look into the language syntax. I'll introduce you to the language fundamentals. And finally, we're going to put theory into practice. And I'll show you how you can easily create highly personalized and sophisticated content using AMPscript and Marketing Cloud. So firstly, then, what is AMPscript? Well, AMPscript is a server-side scripting language. But unlike other server-side scripting languages such as JavaScript, Perl, and Python, AMPscript has been developed for a specific runtime environment, that is Salesforce Marketing Cloud, where scripts are interpreted and executed when the content is rendered. That is, when a message is sent or a web page is published. And AMPscript follows a very simple syntax and has semantics, which makes it very easy to learn and also quick to code. And while AMPscript is an extensive language, its primary focus is in personalizing content across channels. And AMPscript is a language in two parts, a syntax and a library of functions. And with an understanding of both of these, you're able to quickly gain proficiency in your use of the language and create highly personalized and relevant content for marketing campaigns. So now let's first explore the language's functions, and then the syntax. So a bit about AMPscript functions. Now, unlike other scripting languages like JavaScript, which enable you to create user-defined functions, AMPscript offers more of a declarative approach through predefined functions that are primarily orientated to displaying, transforming, and also actually storing customer data in data extension records. And AMPscript is known as a pure function language in that AMPscript functions go and take an input and return an output based on that input. And in programming, pure functions form the foundation of functional programming and are independent, which means that you can move your code around, and it makes it very easy to refactor and adapt. And in AMPscript, there are 147 built-in functions which enable many different things, like working with content, like conditionally displaying content, or maybe different content versions, working with data, that is taking data from data extensions and actually performing CRUD operations for the developers. That is, or non-developers, it's create, read, update, and delete operations on data extension records. There are functions for converting strings and integers and dates and much more. Also functions that enable you to perform some simple math calculations. And finally, functions that enable integration with Sales and Service Cloud objects, and also most REST and SOAP APIs through a set of HTTP functions. And actually, AMPscript functions work in much the same way they do in Excel, where parameters are set, and these parameters are passed to the function as comma separated values that you'll see in these parentheses, and those are interpreted and in turn return a value. And in fact, there are 15 functions in AMPscript identical to Excel in that they take the same number of parameters and return the same output as the Excel counterpart. So let's go and take a look at anatomy of a function. So this is just one of the 147 functions here. And this is called the date add function. As its name implies, it goes and adds something to a date. And this function accepts 3 parameters. We have the date that we want to add. In this case, I'm using, I have a nested function here called now. This is one example. This is identical to the Excel function. This is going to go and give me the system date. Next, I have the part that I want to add. And in this case, I'm using a numeric integer as a constant, in this case 1. But this value, it doesn't have to be a constant. It could be derived from a data extension or maybe a conditional statement. And finally, the part that we want to add, so which can either be year, month, day, hours, or minute. And in this case, I've done D for minute. And then when this is interpreted, when the content is rendered, it's going to go and take that system date and add 1 day to it. So let's discuss a bit about the syntax then. So one common pattern that you may have seen, if any of you had used Marketing Cloud before, is these 2 percentage marks. And this is referred to as personalization strings. And it's important to explain that personalization strings actually aren't part of the AMPscript language. However, no, they are commonly used together with AMPscript, so it's helpful to explore them a bit more. So most digital marketing platforms today offer personalization strings. They might be referred to something else like merge tags or merge fields or substitution strings. But this support enables a string-based identifier enclosed in a delimiter pattern to be substituted with some subscriber data or perhaps a system-derived value when that message is sent. And in AMPscript, in Marketing Cloud and personalization strings, there are 2 different types of personalization strings. We have attribute-based strings and system-based strings. So we take a look at the first example here. We have an attribute-based named first name in, it could be a sendable data extension field, for example, or even a subscriber profile attribute, or maybe it's a journey builder entry source. And when the email is sent, that field is retrieved, for example, like a sendable data extension, and this string is replaced with a value. The second type of personalization string in Marketing Cloud is system-based strings. And there are dozens of different system-based strings. In this case, I'm using this one XTmonth numeric, which goes and takes the month number of the send date, that is when the email is previewed or sent. So, for example, this will output 9, and we'll have another look at an example of that shortly. So let's move on to the AMPscript syntax then, so that's personalization strings. So similar to personalization strings, AMPscript also uses these double percentage marks, which are also enclosed in these bracket delimiters for something called AMPscript blocks, or equality characters for inline AMPscript. And all AMPscript code must be surrounded in matching opening and closing delimiter patterns, otherwise the code within it will be ignored. So let's discuss the differences between AMPscript blocks and inline AMPscript. So with AMPscript blocks, these define the code for interpretation, but do not display an output. So let's take a look at an example here. So what I'm doing here, I've actually got an if statement where, based on that personalization string, xt month numeric, and I know I said that personalization strings have to have percentage, but they don't when used in the context of AMPscript blocks or inline AMPscript. You can, or actually should, remove them. So it's saying that if today's month is September, then we're going to go and set a variable name heading to our EOFY offers. Otherwise, it's going to be our seasonal offers. And even though I'm going to set these variables, and we'll be discussing variables in just a minute, no output is going to be displayed where this code appears on my page. However, inline AMPscript provides a very convenient method for interpreting and executing code within a message context. Let's go and take a look at an example. So here I've got some inline code here, and I'm actually using an IIF AMPscript function. The IIF function is identical to Excel's if function, although it's named something different. I mean, if is a reserved keyword for an if statement. In that it goes and firstly, the first parameter is that you have a logical test. In this case, we're saying that the send month number is equal to 9. Then we're displaying the value to display if true, otherwise the value to display if false. So it's effectively achieving the same as that AMPscript block we looked at previously. And wherever this appears on the page, then when interpreted, a value is going to be returned. However, unlike AMPscript blocks, only a single function can be included in inline AMPscript, although nested functions are supported. And you can't have things like variables or statements. You can't set those within inline AMPscript. So the final part of syntax we're going to cover today is variables. So similar to other scripting languages, AMPscript also support variables, and variables provide a convenient method of setting a functional value once and then reusing that by referencing it within the code. I mean, for those of you who are unfamiliar with variables, but perhaps you know HTML and CSS, in some ways it's a lot like CSS, where we can go and set properties for a CSS class once, and then using a class attribute in our HTML, we can reference that. So we don't have to go and type it out again and again and again. So before we can go and set variables in AMPscript, we have to go and declare them. And we declare them with this var keyword, followed by one or more comma delimited values. So let's have a look here. So if you have a look at this first line here, I'm declaring two variables, expiry date and member status. And some of you who have used AMPscript before might have observed that, oh, actually, it still works if I don't declare variables. And it does. I mean, AMPscript is a loosely typed language. But I encourage you to do so. This is best practice. Is when you do so, it will go and declare those. It will add those variables to an internal data dictionary where the name, the variable name is set as the key, and null is set as the value. And then once declared, we can go and set our variable. And to set the variable is a syntax of 4 elements. So firstly, we have a set keyword. Next, we have a variable name. And then a single equal symbol. And then finally, a personalization string, constant, or even a function. So in this example here, it's important to mention that once a variable is set, the scope of that variable is set globally, but it can be changed after. So here that I have I'm setting an expiry date to the string constant of October 15, but then I'm going to use the attribute value function, and I can see Adam Spix is getting very excited in the back there. This is his favorite AMPscript function out of all 147. It's actually one of my favorites too. I mean, sadly, I named my company attribute value after the AMPscript function. It's attribute value proprietary limited. It's a true but very sad story. Anyway, so what this does is it's going to have a look at the attribute status in the context of the send. Let's say it's a sendable data extension, and if that sendable data extension contains status in its schema, then it's going to return a value, otherwise it's null. And so if that status for a given subscriber is platinum, then we're going to set this different expiry date. So let's take a look, and quickly take a look. It's an example in our last 4 minutes and 54 seconds. So I've gone and built an email for a travel company, and they want to go and target prospective customers with an offer. And here we have our sendable data extension, which contains a score out of 10 for each prospect, based off different ranking criteria. So we have one column for, firstly, the company, according to their target industry and their size. Secondly, the buying cycle stage of that prospect. Thirdly, whether they're influencer or perhaps a decision maker. And there's some other factors too. So that's the data extension. Let's go and take a look at our lovely code. So you can see that I've gone and declared the variables at the top. And here I'm going in setting some predefined weighting values for each of those categories. So I'm setting these to these numeric constants here. And then below it, I'm going to go and multiply those together and then add them all together to derive a lead score out of 10 for each subscriber. And so from this, I actually end up with a variable called recency weighting total. But as the AMPscript is contained within an AMPscript block, these 26 lines, no output is displayed where this appears. However, I've gone and set a variable, and I can now go and use this variable in my email. Here you can see I've got a personalization string at the top here, it's called first name, and also some inline AMPscript, which brings us back to our old friend we had a look at earlier, the IIF function, where we're saying, if the value of our recency weighting total variable is greater than or equal to 7, then give them 10% off. Otherwise, give them 20% off. Because if they got a lower score, then we want to incentivize them. We want to give them a higher discount than people who are going to buy anyway. And when I preview that email, the discount amount is conditionally displayed based on my lead score that's calculated in my block. And this is just one example of how you can create highly personalized and sophisticated content in Marketing Cloud. So to learn more, again, I encourage you to go and pick up a copy of the AMPscript Guide, Comprehensive Reference Manual to AMPscript, which actually talks through all the fundamental concepts that we've covered here today, and pick up a copy from the Dream Store. I think there are just a few left. But if there aren't, then you can head over to ampscript.guide. It's available online. Also, just another plug for a great resource this is an example of our online version of the book. Also encourage you to head over to Salesforce Stack Exchange. So Stack Exchange is a great user community where you can go and ask any AMPscript questions and get answers, not only for AMPscript, but any technical questions. And you'll find a link to it on the Marketing Cloud Developer Center. So down the bottom under Developer Forums, there we go. Well, thank you for coming along. I've just got 1 minute left, and I'm going to won't take questions here because the format doesn't allow for it, but I'll be hanging around if you want to go and pick up a card. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/inelliot. I'm happy to answer any questions after. Thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of Dreamforce.